Rob here at etrailer.com, and today you're going to be taking a look at the EcoHitch Class III custom fit Invisi hitch on our 2019 Subaru WRX STI. It's going to be completely hidden behind the bumper until we want to use it. Then we can remove the factory knockout and we can see the receiver tube sticking out. Once we're not using our hitch, we can put the factory knockout in and it looks like it's not there and it's a completely stock Subaru WRX. The nice thing about that, not only does it make it look nice, but it's also going to save us a lot of ground clearance because our STI sits a little bit lower to the ground, so we're not going to have to worry about anything hanging below the bumper. And since our hitch is going to have a 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube opening, we're going to have a really wide variety of options when we can mount up. If we want to go on a bike ride, throw a couple bikes on a bike rack, put a cargo carrier on there to keep all that dirty, nasty gear out of our Subaru, or we can put a ball mount in if we want to tow a trailer. Now the way we're going to mount any of our accessories is through the hitch pin hole here on the side of the receiver tube. It is going to accept a standard 5/8 pin and clip. These are not included in the kit, but you can pick them up here at etrailer.com. Now you might be wondering, well, how am I supposed to get in there and put the clip in and put my accessories in? And I'll tell you, to be honest, it is a little difficult, but you reach underneath the fascia, just pull outwards slightly, and we can get our pin and clip into position. But the whole point is that the hitch is going to be hidden behind the bumper and it's not going to be distracting. Now, if you are going to be towing a trailer, you're probably wondering, well, if the receiver tube's up here, where are my safety hooks? It would be almost impossible to hook up your safety hooks by the receiver tube. Well, EcoHitch went ahead and put them down here below the bumper, so now we should have plenty of room to get those hooks connected. And again, it's tucked up high enough that it's not seen, but it's easily accessible. Now, obviously, if you're looking for a hitch, the weight capacity is going to be a big concern of yours. You want to make sure that it's going to be up for the task and what we're going to use it for. Well, our hitch is going to have a 525-pound tongue weight, which is the maximum downward force of the receiver tube. It's going to be great for some of those larger bike racks, even up to 4 or 5 bikes, or some of the smaller cargo carriers, so we can maximize the amount of gear that we put on them. As far as the gross trailer weight rating goes, our hitch is going to have a 3,500-pound rating. That's how much our hitch can pull, including the trailer and everything we have loaded on it. But you always want to double check your WRX's owner's manual because you don't want to exceed the manufacturer's recommended weight. So if you're comparing this hitch to the other ones available for your WRX, this is going to be the only one that has a 2-inch receiver tube and the only one that's going to be hidden behind the bumper. The other are going to have an 1.25 inch receiver tube opening, which has less options for accessories, and we're going to lose some ground clearance because they're going to be hanging down below the bumper. One thing I do want to mention about the hitch here is if you look through the receiver tube, you can see the back of the trunk pan there. So we are going to be limited on what accessories we can use. We're limited by the hitch pin hole. It can only have 2.5 inches that extends past that. Otherwise, it is going to come in contact with the car, and the pinholes will not line up. I'd like to give you a few measurements, and these are going to help you when you're looking at accessories for your new hitch, like a ball mount, a bike rack, or even a cargo carrier. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the outermost edge of the bumper, it's going to be right about 3.5 inches. Now that measurement's going to come in handy when you're looking at folding accessories to make sure you have enough room, and they're not going to come in contact with the rear bumper. And from the ground to the inside top edge of the receiver tube opening, you're right about 17 inches. That measurement's going to help you when you're looking for a ball mount to match up to your trailer so you can find the appropriate rise or drop. But now that we've seen what our hitch looks like and gone over some of the features, let's put it on together. To begin our installation, we want to open up our rear trunk. We're going to remove all the floor covering so we can have access to the rear threshold here. Now on the inside, we're going to have a few fasteners holding it in place. We're going to pull those out. So there's going to be a total of 3 of these. So you want to grab a flat blade screwdriver or a trim panel tool. There's a very small notch on the side. We want to pry out on that notch so the center comes out. And then we can pop the outer part out and the whole clip will come out. Once all the clips are removed, we're going to grab the bottom of the panel and we're going to lift straight up and we'll set this aside. Now if we move to the outside edge, right by our tail light, on the inside of the trunk here we're going to have a push pin. That's going to be holding that felt material. We need to get that out so we can get behind the felt and get access to our tail light. So I'm going to take a trim panel tool, I'll pop that clip out. You want to pry the center section up first. It's going to be the gray section. There'll be a white section underneath it, and then we can pull that out as well. So we can grab that carpet, and we're just going to pull it back a little bit. and that'll give us access to all the wires and nuts that are holding our taillight assembly in place. Now we got these little white clips that are over the studs on the nuts that are holding our taillight in. You want to slide those off so we can get access to them. We're going to have a total of 3 bolts that are holding our taillight in, and 2 of them are going to have these clips on it. If you're having a little bit of trouble, you can grab a flat blade screwdriver or a trim panel tool and pop them off. We're going to want to unplug the wires. Well, this white connector, just press down on the tab and pull towards the front of the car. Then we get ready to pull these 3 bolts out. So you're going to grab an 8mm socket and we'll pull all those nuts out. And whenever you remove these, you want to be careful. You don't want to drop them because it will roll under the carpet. It makes it really difficult to find them. Then we'll grab our taillight, and you want to pull straight back. It will be a little tight. You may have to work at it a little bit, but it should come loose. Once it does, we'll go ahead and set it aside, and we can remove our other taillight assembly. We're going to move to the rear wheel well now, and right behind our tire at the edge here, you may have a couple push pins. We're missing one of ours down here at the bottom, but if we come right where the fender meets the fascia, we're going to have another push pin that we're going to need to remove. This is going to be a little different. If we grab a flathead screwdriver, we're going to push in on the center, and that's going to take the tension off. And then we can come underneath the outer ring and we'll pry it out. You just want to be careful because these push pins can get pretty brittle. We'll go ahead and pull that push pin out, and we'll remove the other one on the other side as well. If we move underneath the bottom of our Subaru, on the edge, on each side, we're going to have 3 push pins that are attaching the fascia to the bottom of the car. We need to remove those as well. We'll take a flathead screwdriver, come into the notch. We're going to pry out the center section. And once that's out, we'll pry out the outer ring and pull the push pin out. We want to pull all 3 of these out on each side. Now if we move in just a little bit, right by where our exhaust is, we're going to have a push pin that's actually underneath the lip of the fascia here. Then more towards the center, we're going to have one that's on the outside. We're going to pull both of those off, and these are going to be in the same location on both sides. Now on each side of the trunk, right by our taillight, we're going to have this bolt. So we're going to grab a 10mm socket so we can pull it out. I'm getting ready to take our fascia off. Now it's a good idea to get an extra set of hands so we don't have to worry about picking it up and being so cumbersome. But we're going to start at the edge where our fascia meets the fender. We'll grab the corner and we're going to want to pull outward. You're going to work your way towards the center, releasing all the clips. Now once you get to about the taillight area, you kind of want to grab underneath, lift up while you're pulling it away, and then I'll release the clips over here. And once we have it loose, make sure that there's no electrical connectors that we need to disconnect, and we'll set the fascia aside where it won't get damaged. With the fascia removed, it's going to expose our crash bumper or the bumper beam. It's going to be held on by 3 fasteners, 2 on each side and 1 on the bottom. We're going to want to remove those, so we're going to have a 14mm socket and a long extension so we can go through the access holes to pull the hardware out. With these 3 removed, we'll remove the other 3 on the other side as well. Now your bumper beam, if you haven't ever had it off before, it may be a little tight. Just kind of want to work it loose, and then we can pull it off and set it aside for right now. We're going to move underneath now because we need to lower our exhaust. Before we lower it, I want to put a support strap up. That way it won't hang down too far and cause any damage. You just want to find a solid point on the frame or anywhere that's not going to be moving. I'm going to tighten the strap up so that it'll support it and we can lower it down. Now we move to the inside of the muffler. On each side we're going to have an exhaust hanger. We want to slide these off. So just take a little bit of spray lubricant, spray them down. And if you have an exhaust hanger removal tool, you can use that, or you can just grab a pry bar. And the main goal here is just to slide that isolator off the post, just like that. Then we'll move to the outside of the muffler. And it's going to be a little difficult to see and reach, but we're going to have another one that's towards the front of the car on the outside of the muffler. So again, we'll spray it down with some lubricant. We'll get our pry bar in there and slide that hanger off. And with this muffler down, we're going to repeat that on the other side. So we can lower our exhaust down to give us a little bit more room to work with. But if you find that you don't have enough room, right forward just of the rear axle, we're going to have another hanger here, and we can remove that one as well to give us a little bit more headroom. Above our muffler, we'll have our heat shield. We need to pull this out. There's going to be a total of 4 bolts holding it in place. So we'll grab a 10mm socket, and we'll pull all those out. You want to hold on to all the hardware. And with all of it removed, we're going to pull our heat shield out. We're going to set it aside, and we'll pull out the other side as well. With the heat shield out of the way, it'll expose the bottom of the frame here. We're going to have several plastic or rubber type plugs in the bottom. We're going to want to remove the one at the very back and the one at the very front. So just grab a flathead screwdriver, we'll pop those plugs out, and we'll do the same thing on the other side of the frame in the same locations. So we're going to take our pull wire, we're going to feed the coiled end into the furthest hole towards the front. We're going to start feeding it towards the back until we can get it to come out the large opening that our bumper structure was covering up here. Now you want to make sure you have the coiled end sticking out as well as the tail end on the bottom of the frame. Once everything's coming through, we're going to grab the plate spacer. We'll slide it over the coiled end of our wire. Just going to put it on top so it doesn't drop. We'll grab a star washer and our bolt. Slide the star washer over the bolt. Then we're going to thread on the end of the bolt to the wire. We'll grab the tail end, we're going to pull on our pull wire until everything can start going through the frame rail until it drops down and that bolt goes through that spacer block. We're going to very carefully remove the pull wire from the bolt because we are going to have to reuse it. So we'll just uncoil it. Don't want to pull on it because it will damage the coil and it won't thread on anymore. And then we're going to repeat that whole process with all 3 remaining holes that we unplugged. So we have both our heat shields here, and went ahead and marked out the areas that need to be trimmed. And if we find the forwardmost mounting location that's going to be on the frame rail, it'll have this little section at the back here where it kind of curves, has a little half moon shape. We're going to want to cut that rectangle out of the heat shield, and it's going to be the same location on both sides. Whenever you're cutting it, you can use whatever you have available. I'm going to use a pair of 10 snips, that way I can make it pretty quick. But again, you just want to trim out that rectangle section right at the end by that last mounting location. And with this heat shield trimmed out, we're going to go ahead and trim out the section on the other one as well. With our heat shield trimmed, we'll raise it back up into position, and we're going to re-secure it using only 2 of the pieces of hardware. You want to make sure you leave the bolts out of the bottom of the frame, because our heat shield is actually going to get sandwiched between our hitch and the frame. So we want to leave these 2 bolts out and only put in the 2 outer bolts. And we'll repeat that for the other heat shield as well. With everything back in place now, we get ready to put up our hitch. Before we do, I want to go over the combination of hardware that's going to hold it up. We're going to have 2 flat washers that will slide over the bolt. We'll follow it up with a lock washer, and then finally secure it down with a hex nut. That's going to be the same combination for all 4 bolts that are coming down through the frame. Now with an extra set of hands, we're going to lift our hitch into position. You kind of want to come underneath until you get to about where the cutouts are here. Then we're going to lift the center section up and then rotate the side plates so they line up with the bolts. You just want to be careful not to push the bolts back into the frame and make sure they do come through the hitch. And once we have it up, we can grab our hardware. We'll slide each piece on. And we'll secure it using at least 1 nut on each side. That way the hitch will hold itself up and we don't have to worry about it falling. And with the 2 in place holding it, we can get the rest of our hardware in. And if you're having trouble keeping the hardware still to get the nuts started, what I like to do is I like to put the washers on, kind of push against the bolt. It'll trap it, and then we'll be able to thread on that nut a lot easier and won't be spinning on us. I'm going to come back with a 19mm socket. You can also use a 3/4 inch socket, and I'm just going to snug up my hardware. You don't want to really crank on these yet. You just want to snug them up so that the frame rail and the plate are really close and it kind of sucks everything up. We're going to repeat that for all of our remaining hardware. Now we'll move to the fascia where we have it removed. That center section here, it's going to have a knockout in it. There's going to be 2 tabs on the top. We're going to press in on those tabs, and the knockout should fall forward. We're going to hold on to this because we are going to have to do a little bit of trimming. Now we're going to need to trim off the little wings here on the side of the center of the fascia, and we're going to go across. But that little tab here that the knockout was sitting in, you want to keep that section so it still holds it in place. So you want to get really close to that opening, but you don't want to cut it completely off. I'm going to use a Dremel tool just so I can make a nice clean cut, and be very careful when you're cutting it. And with this side trimmed, I'm going to repeat the same thing for the other side. We're going to grab our bumper beam or the impact structure. We're going to line it back up. And then I'm going to loosely reinstall the nuts on the studs. That way I don't have to worry about it falling off. And we can get the rest of the hardware in place. We'll come back with that same 14mm socket and extension, and we'll tighten up all our hardware. Now at this point we're going to get ready to put our fascia back on. And you may be wondering why we haven't torqued our hitch down, put our exhaust back or anything. That's because we want to make sure that the receiver tube opening sticks out and is centered in that knockout hole. So if we need to make any kind of side-to-side adjustments, we still can, but that way we can do it and make sure it fits with the fascia well. So we can take our fascia, we're going to get it real close to lined up. We're going to start getting it lined up and check our hitch in the knockout section, and if it is lined up well, you can start pushing the fascia in, resecuring all the clips, and then we'll put all the fasteners back in place. Once you have your fascia back in place and you can verify that the hitch opening is in the center of that knockout and it's in the position you want, we can come back and we'll torque everything down to the specified amount in the instructions. You want to make sure you repeat that for any remaining hardware you have. With our hitch torqued down, we can lift our exhaust back up, and we're going to slide all the hangers back on to the rubber isolator. It may help to slide them back on. If you have a little bit more spray lubricant on there, it'll just slide a little bit easier. And finally, we can remove the support strap from the exhaust. With everything torqued down, that'll finish up your installation. However, I do recommend leaving at least these 2 push pins at the bottom out. That'll give us enough room to pull out on the fascia just a bit, so we can reach our hand in and we can pull the knockout out. That'll finish up your look at the EcoHitch Class III Custom Fit Invisi hitch on our 2019 Subaru WRX STI.